I'm a game developer, but I also play an obscene amount of VR games. Like, way too much. I've always wanted to make my very own VR game. I've just never been able to get that secret VR game sauce. The magic from Blade and Sorcery, the lightsabers from Beat Saber, the earthbending from Mummy. But today, that changes. See, I've come up with the ultimate approach to VR sword fighting. Not simulated weapon physics, not stance-paced damage. No. My game is based on style. Hear me out. The number one problem with VR sword fighting is that wiggly thing you can do to just insta-kill enemies. Blade and Sorcery solves this by simulating drag on the weapon. Broken Edge solves it by making you do these specific stances and attack in a specific way to deal damage. But what if your damage is based purely on style? Let's say the sword has a base damage of 1. We do a spin mid-air, the damage increases. If we throw the sword in the air, jump up, catch it before smashing down, the damage increases. This would force the player to be cool. So, with this information in hand, I got to work setting up a VR project in Godot. The setup in Godot is really simple. You just add 1 or 2 XR nodes and a tiny script to start OpenXR, and it just works right off the bat. Now, let's get into gameplay. The core mechanic of this game is this sword. When I was making this, I wanted to get it right. So let's start with this cool smear visual. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't write this. But I think I can explain how it works. Basically, there's a shader on this outer layer of the sword. The shader keeps track of the previous position the sword was in, then uses a noise texture to pick a couple vertices on the sword. It then moves these vertices back towards that previous position, based on that earlier mentioned noise. This gives the illusion that part of the sword is lagging behind, like an animation smear. When I first created the sword, I used Godot's XR Tools plugin, just because it was so easy to set up. All you have to do is drag in one of their custom nodes onto the controller, and then you can just pick up objects. I had to change my own custom system later on. Oh my god. I had to change to my own custom system later on, but I'll explain why when we get there. Pretty early on, I decided I wanted a lot of movement options. And so, I created this dashing mechanic. Basically, when you grab the sword in the air, you get shot towards it. This allows for all kinds of cool combos, like throwing a sword at someone, then launching past them and slashing them on the way. Another cool thing you can do with the sword is stab it into the ground, then slingshot off of it. I got the stabbing to work by checking if the sword is in a collider when you release it. If it is, the game adds it to a climb points group, which tells the player controller it can slingshot off of it. All of this gives us a sword that is really fun and satisfying to use. But the problem is, we still have no incentive to be cool. So let's fix that. It's time for the style meter. Well, it's not exactly a meter. I decided to have the sword glow brighter based on how much damage it does for a more... diegetic indicator. See what I did there? That was a fancy word. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, as this is easily the most complex system I've ever written. I made a couple of tricks that could be combined in your combos, like an air 360, bouncing your sword off a wall, and hitting someone from above. My dad really wanted this one for some reason. I don't know why. Let's take a break from gameplay for a minute, and talk about some music. I really wanted to do some dynamic music for this game. My idea was the music would get more intense the more powerful the sword was. Problem is, I'm terrible at making music. So, I asked one of my friends to make a quick song for me, and man, did he deliver. I also got him to make a final layer for the song that only played when your damage was really high, and it really helps that feeling of power. Around this time, my dad joined the project after we had finished the demo for our main game, Druid's Crown. We decided on the structure of the game. We were going to make the game level-based, where you cleared out enemies until you reached the boss at the end. My dad got to work on the first level of the game, which would make up our demo, while I worked on enemies. This was a huge mistake. Remember earlier when I said I had to make a custom grabbing system later on? Well, later on is now. For some reason, I decided I wanted active ragdoll enemies. Kinda like taps. The problem was, the XR tool system doesn't use physics. So, if I ever hit something with the sword, it would go flying because the physics system assumed an infinite mass object was being pushed by an infinitely powerful force. I also couldn't ever stop the sword like I wanted to with shields and other weapons. So, I began the long grind of making my own physics-based grab system. I'll cut an extremely long story short. I made the sword calculate the difference in position and rotation to the player's hand, and then apply it as a force. Then, the sword would constantly overshoot and recorrect, leading to this annoying shaking. So then, I had to calculate damping, and then more problems came. But finally, I could hit an enemy. I came up with a couple types of enemies. There's the spear enemy, which tries to stab you and backs away when you get close. There's the shooting enemy, which will, shoots. There's the shield enemy, which has an immovable shield that it points at you, so you have to hit around it. There's also a secret boss enemy, but you'll have to wait for the showcase to see that. My dad also finished up on the level using an art style we recently decided on, where technology and nature mix, leading to sci-fi buildings in trees. And with all that done, I think we're finally ready to try out the game.